It's 12:15, and welcome to Cleveland Opera Theater's Opera 101. Opera 101 is our daily talk about a few different aspects of the opera process, the opera world, answer any questions you might have. And today we are going to talk about one of the more little known and little seen aspects of an opera production, and that is that of the prompter. Now, prompters about 50, 60 years ago were present in every opera house, and productions rarely happened without them. Nowadays, they are not used so frequently. There are many reasons for that, which we'll get into, but a lot of the big houses still use them. The Metropolitan Opera uses them for every performance. San Francisco Opera uses them. They are very integral to opera houses in Germany. And for some of us, they are a very helpful and good thing to have in order to ensure the success of a production. So in the front of a stage in an opera house, there is often the prompter's box, which is where the prompter sits. It is right behind where the orchestra pit meets the stage. It is slightly elevated with only probably about a 2-foot gap, so the singers on stage can see the prompter's face and their hands. What the prompter's job is to do is to help the singers. Usually this entails giving the singers a vocal cue as to what their upcoming word is, as well as a cue with their hand for where to sing. Now, why would this be necessary when you have a conductor and the singers need to watch the conductor? Well, a lot of times, operas are very long, and singers, like music, like all other musicians, like all other people, can make mistakes. Essentially, the prompter is an extra safety net. Sometimes we all just forget a line. It's not a problem. Even the best do it. And so the prompter is there to give the line and give the cue. Also, the conductor has a lot to work on. When we're conducting, we have the singers, the orchestra, the staging, and there are certain times in the way, maybe it could be because the opera is staged a certain way, where the singer says to the conductor, hey, I really need a cue here. I have a hard time hearing the orchestra based on where I'm staging. For some reason, this passage just isn't clicking. I forget if I, wait 1 or 2 beats. So the conductor usually says, by all means, fine, and they write in their score, make sure to cue the singer here. But say, for example, we're coming up to that part and something goes wrong in the orchestra. Maybe the oboist forgets to come in. The clarinetist comes in 2 bars early. The conductor's going to immediately, second nature, direct their attention to the orchestra. And then that singer is like, oh, great, this is where I needed the cue. Well, if you have a prompter there, nothing to worry, because the prompter can look at the singer and remind them where to come in. So how does this process work? Well, typically, when we're prompting, give the singer a word and the cue. So let's take, for example, the beginning of Le Nozze di Figaro. The first line, yum ba bum 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 cinque. So if I am prompting about a measure or 2 before, I will put up the hand. And then I will give a cue, and I will give the line right before they sing. A little hard to demonstrate with one person, but it will be something along the lines of yum ba bum 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 cinque cinque. So sometimes, let's take, for example, the first line of Così fan tutte. La mia d'ora bella capace non è. So you can't give that entire line, so you just give the beginning. 1, 2, 3. La mia d'ora bella capace non è. So you have to pick and choose as the prompter what you give and what you don't. Usually it's the first word, the first 2 words. If it's just an article like la, it doesn't really helpful. It could be la anything. So la mia, okay, yeah, that's right. It's la mia d'ora bella capace non è. So when you are prompting, you need to know the score inside and out, just as well as the conductor does. The singers need to be off book. You need to be off book too. If you're looking at the score, figuring out what the lines are, you're lost and you're not going to be helpful. So you have to know the score inside and out. You have to know the text inside and out. It's also very important for you to know the staging and to be at all the staging rehearsals, because if you're looking for a character and you're like, oh gosh, where are they now? You're too late. You need to know exactly where the singers are on the stage so you can help them out. You also need to know who needs help and where. Certain singers will maybe struggle with a certain passage and be fine with other things. So you need to know, well, I can leave these guys alone for a while, but when we get to this section, I really need to be on my toes and giving every cue that I can. Some singers prefer not to have prompting. Some singers, because it's not used as much anymore, they say it distracts them, which, if I'm prompting and someone says, don't prompt me, absolutely. But that doesn't mean you don't stay engaged with them. If you don't give them words and don't give them cues, you still have to be there in case, say, they're rushing. You need to give them some sort of indication. What do you do if a singer is rushing? Well, you can't conduct because they're already seeing a beat pattern behind you from the conductor. And if they see a second one, that's going to be extremely confusing. And they're going to be like, where do I look? So typically what I would do is just kind of tap the tempo, and not so much for them to hear it, but as another indication, say, hey, something's wrong. We're not quite together. Look at the conductor. We need to check in and get on. Sometimes a singer might just kind of space out on stage. We all do it. It's not a criticism. It's just operas sometimes are 3 to 5 hours. There's a lot of time in that span where one could lose their attention span a little bit. So sometimes it's just they're spacing out. We need to get their attention. The typical prompter trick for that is to I know it seems a little weird, but to kind of do a kissing sound, like. The reason for that is because it cuts but doesn't resonate. The singers will hear it because it cuts through the space, but it doesn't resonate back, so the audience will not hear it and will not be aware that there's a problem going on. Typically, the prompter tries to not be noticed by the audience. If you go to the Metropolitan Opera, all you usually see is a little the front of the stage. If you listen to old recordings from live recordings from the 1940s, 1950s, a lot of them, you can really hear the prompter. And it's an interesting insight to hear how they did it, and that was just an accepted part of the performance. Why isn't the prompter used as much today? Well, there's a lot of reasons. A lot of stage directors didn't like the fact that there was a hand going up and down, and that the singers were given a little less freedom in their eyes. Certain music directors kind of thought, well, this isn't really necessary. Certainly budget cuts had a lot to do, and a lot of it just has to do with a lot of smaller houses and companies do not perform in opera houses where there is a prompter's box. And if there's not a prompter's box, the question of where to put the prompter is very difficult, because the prompter needs to be in the same eye level as the conductor, because you can't expect a singer to look 2 different places. It'll just be too confusing. It's better not to have a prompter at all than to have, the confusion going on in the singers of, do I look at the conductor or do I look at the prompter? I don't know. I've got 2 different things coming from 2 different directions. It's just going to make it worse. So unfortunately, we have lost prompters in a lot of smaller scale productions and companies. But when it is employed, it is still a very, very, very useful tool. A lot of times you see this at the Met a decent amount. Certain singers, when they take their curtain call, will give a little hand acknowledgement or a little one of these to the prompter's box as a way to say, thank you, you might have saved me a few times there, or we really appreciate what you're doing. It's a very, very difficult job, prompting, but it's very, very rewarding. Every time I've gotten to do it, I've learned so much, and I think it is a very essential skill for conductors and coaches to have. One, because it makes you learn the opera. It forces you to learn the opera in an extremely detailed manner, and it also gives you such an insight into the issues that the singers are facing, and makes you so much more sensitive to all the needs of a singer that you can always take with you going forward. If anyone has any questions about prompting, as always, feel free to email them to us. And as always, such a pleasure to join you. And thank you for tuning in. And we will see you tomorrow.